The storm came out of nowhere. One minute we were taking readings from the safety of our research vessel, and the next, the sky turned black and waves the size of buildings slammed into us from all sides. I spat out a mouthful of seawater and pulled myself up onto the wet sand, my limbs heavy and unresponsive after fighting the current. The beach stretched out before me, dark and alien in the fading storm light. Island B212. After 2 years of satellite imagery, water samples, and atmospheric readings, I was finally here, though not how I'd planned. "Sarah, Dr. Chen, over here." Charlie's voice cut through the wind. I turned to see him dragging himself from the surf about 30 feet down the beach, his usually neat salt and pepper hair plastered to his head. Relief washed through me. At least I wasn't alone. "Anyone else?" I called back, scanning the churning water for signs of our other crew members. Charlie pointed further down the shore where 2 figures were huddled together near a piece of what looked like our ship's hull. Jack and Andrew. Thank God. I forced myself to stand on wobbly legs and made my way toward them, taking in our surroundings as I moved. The beach was narrow, quickly giving way to dense vegetation, unlike anything I'd seen outside our satellite images. Massive ferns and strange flowering plants crowded the shoreline, some stretching 20 feet high. The air felt wrong, too warm and thick for an island in these coordinates. "The Eleanor's gone," Jack said as I approached. His square jaw was set in a grim line, a fresh cut running across his forehead. "Went down about a mile offshore. We got lucky with that current pushing us in." Andrew sat beside him, looking younger than his 28 years, as he shivered despite the unusual warmth. His glasses were miraculously still on his face, though one lens was cracked. "Status report," I said, falling back on protocol to keep panic at bay. "Injuries?" "Cuts and bruises," Charlie said, joining our small circle. "Andrew might have a sprained wrist, equipment's mostly gone. I managed to grab one of the emergency packs before we abandoned ship, but that's about it." I looked past them to the scattered debris washing up on shore, twisted metal, shattered equipment cases, waterlogged supplies. 2 years of careful research and preparation destroyed in less than an hour. "The satellite phone?" I asked, already knowing the answer from Charlie's expression. "At the bottom of the ocean, along with most of our communications gear." He ran a hand through his hair. "I found this, though." He held out a waterlogged tablet in a protective case. Our research database. It was something, at least. "The emergency beacon?" I asked. Jack shook his head. "Deployed it before we abandoned ship. If it survived the storm, someone should pick up the signal. And if they do?" Andrew's voice was small. "Standard protocol," Charlie answered. "They'll search the last known coordinates, expand out from there, but given our location..." He didn't need to finish. Island B22 was deliberately selected for its remoteness, 500 miles from the nearest shipping lane, far from commercial flight paths. It was why we'd been able to study it undisturbed for so long. Now that isolation was our greatest enemy. 2 weeks, Jack said, voicing what we all knew. Minimum. That's if they mounted a search immediately and knew exactly where to look. Probably longer, I added. Our check-in isn't scheduled until next Friday. They won't even know we're missing for another 8 days. A heavy silence fell over our group as the reality of our situation sank in. We were stuck on an uninhabited island with minimal supplies, no communication, and a rescue that might be weeks or even months away. I should have been terrified, and part of me was. But as I looked past my bedraggled crew to the island interior, I couldn't deny the flutter of excitement in my chest. For 2 years, I'd fought for funding to mount an expedition to this island, facing rejection after rejection. The geological anomalies I'd documented, unusual heat signatures, electromagnetic disturbances, vegetation patterns that defied explanation, weren't enough to convince the Foundation to risk an expensive landing operation. And now, here I was. "We need to salvage what we can," I said, pushing aside my inappropriate excitement, "then find fresh water and shelter before nightfall." Charlie nodded and started organizing our meager resources while Jack began examining the larger pieces of debris washing ashore. Andrew still sat in the sand, looking lost. "You okay?" I asked, crouching beside him. He nodded unconvincingly. "Just processing. Yesterday I was worried about finishing my dissertation. Now I'm wondering if I'll live long enough to defend it." "We're going to be fine," I said with more confidence than I felt. "This island has water sources. We've seen them in the satellite imagery. The climate seems mild enough, and we know help will come eventually." Andrew looked up at the strange plants surrounding us. "It's nothing like the images, is it? Everything looks so normal from above." He was right. The satellite pictures had shown unusual vegetation density, but nothing to prepare us for the oversized plants and odd coloration surrounding us. Science said islands this size shouldn't have unique ecosystems, yet everything I could see suggested B22 operated by different rules. "Help me look for any equipment that might have survived," I said, offering Andrew my hand, "especially any of the sample containers or testing kits." As Andrew and I combed the shoreline, I couldn't help stealing glances at the island interior. The Foundation had denied my requests because they said there was nothing special about B22, just another volcanic outcropping in the Pacific. But I knew better. The temperature readings we'd been collecting for 2 years showed heat patterns that couldn't be explained by normal volcanic activity. The atmospheric samples contained trace elements that didn't match anything in the surrounding ocean. And there were the electromagnetic anomalies that kept interfering with our remote sensors. Something was happening on this island, something that broke the rules. By sunset, we had collected what little survived the shipwreck: one emergency kit with basic first aid supplies and a few emergency rations, the waterlogged tablet that might work once it dried out, 2 sample collection cases with some intact equipment, Jack's tool belt that he'd been wearing during the evacuation, a few pieces of torn sail that could serve as shelter, and random pieces of the ship that Jack insisted might be useful. Charlie had ventured 100 yards inland and found a small clearing where we could set up camp for the night. As Jack and Andrew arranged the sail pieces into a makeshift tent, Charlie pulled me aside. "We need to talk about rationing," he said quietly. "The emergency kit only has food for maybe 3 days if we stretch it." I nodded. "Tomorrow we'll organize a proper survey, look for fresh water and food sources." The satellite imagery showed what looked like fruit-bearing trees on the northwest section. Charlie glanced toward the dense vegetation. "This place feels wrong, Sarah. The plants, the temperature. It's not what we expected." "I know," I said, unable to hide a hint of eagerness in my voice. Charlie caught it immediately. He'd been my right hand for 5 years. He could read me like a book. "This isn't one of your research opportunities, Sarah. We're fighting for survival here." "I'm well aware of that," I said, my tone sharper than intended. "But we're scientists, Charlie. We observe, we analyze, even in crisis." He held my gaze for a moment before nodding. "Just remember our priority is getting home safely, not solving the mystery of B22. "Of course," I said, though we both knew the island's secrets were already calling to me. As night fell, we huddled under our makeshift shelter. Jack had managed to start a small fire, and the dancing flames cast strange shadows against the oversized ferns surrounding our camp. Andrew had finally stopped shaking and was now sketching the unusual plants in a small notebook he'd kept in his pocket. "We should take shifts," Jack suggested. "Keep the fire going and watch for anything." No one asked what anything might be on an uninhabited island. There was something about this place that put us all on edge, a feeling of being watched that I couldn't shake despite knowing there were no large predators in this part of the Pacific. "I'll take first watch," I volunteered. Sleep would be impossible anyway, with my mind racing through all the questions that had brought me to B212 in the first place. Why did the vegetation grow to such unusual sizes? What caused the heat anomalies we'd been tracking? Why did our instruments always malfunction when pointed at certain parts of the island? And most intriguing of all, Why had no one ever established any permanent presence here despite the island appearing on navigation charts for nearly a century? As the others settled into uneasy sleep, I sat by the fire and stared into the darkness beyond our small camp. The Eleanor was gone, along with most of our equipment and our easy way home. We were stranded on an island that had occupied my thoughts for 2 years, with nothing but the clothes on our backs and whatever we could salvage. I should have been consumed by fear or regret. Instead, I felt a thrill of anticipation running through me as I looked toward the dark interior of the island. B212 had called to me from the first anomalous reading, and now I was here. Whatever secrets it held, I would find them. Charlie was right to be concerned. Getting us home safely needed to be my priority as expedition leader. But as I sat alone in the flickering firelight, listening to the strange sounds coming from the island's interior, I couldn't deny the truth. Part of me had always wanted this, to be stranded here, forced to uncover the island's mysteries with no committee oversight, no budget restrictions, no cautious protocols holding me back, just pure discovery. I pulled my knees to my chest and watched the unfamiliar stars through breaks in the clouds. Rescue would come eventually, but until then, Island B212 was mine to explore. I must have dozed off during my watch. The fire had burned low, leaving only glowing embers when Charlie shook me awake just before dawn. "My turn," he said quietly. "Get some rest." I nodded, embarrassed at falling asleep on duty, and crawled under our makeshift shelter. Sleep came instantly, but it wasn't peaceful. Strange images flickered through my mind, shapes moving beneath dark water, flashes of light from unknown depths. When I woke again, sunlight filtered through the sailcloth above me, and the others were already moving about camp. "Morning," Jack said, offering me a small piece of protein bar from our emergency rations. "We saved you some breakfast." "Thanks." I took the tiny portion, trying not to think about how quickly our supplies would run out. "We need to find water today." Andrew sat nearby, scribbling in his notebook. The sprain in his wrist didn't seem to be slowing him down. "I've been documenting the plant life around us," he said, turning the book toward me. "Look at this fern. The structure is familiar, but the size is impossible. It's like a prehistoric version." The sketches showed detailed renderings of the massive plants surrounding our camp. Andrew had a talent for illustration I hadn't fully appreciated before. "Let's organize ourselves," I said, standing and brushing sand from my clothes. "Priority 1 is fresh water. The satellite images showed what might be streams coming from the center of the island. Priority 2 is more food and better shelter." Charlie nodded. Jack and I salvaged a few more things that washed up overnight. Another piece of sail, some rope, and this. He handed me a waterproof case containing one of our handheld atmospheric sensors. It had survived intact, protected by its casing. "Perfect," I said, unable to hide my excitement. "This will let us track those thermal anomalies I was telling you about." Charlie gave me a warning look. "Water first, Sarah. Science second." "The two aren't mutually exclusive," I replied. "The heat signatures might lead us to volcanic activity, which could mean fresh water sources." He couldn't argue with that logic, though I saw the skepticism in his eyes. Charlie knew me too well. We packed what little we had and set out toward the island's interior. The beach quickly gave way to dense vegetation, forcing us to move in single file. Jack took the lead with his utility knife, cutting a path through the thickest growth. I followed with the sensor, then Andrew with his notebook, and Charlie bringing up the rear. The deeper we went, the stranger our surroundings became. Flowers the size of dinner plates bloomed with colors I'd never seen in nature. Purples so deep they were almost black, blues that seemed to shift and pulse in the dappled sunlight. Vines thick as my arm twisted up tree trunks that stretched impossibly high. "This can't be natural," Andrew murmured behind me. "Island ecosystems this small shouldn't develop unique species like this. There's not enough isolation or time." "Maybe it's not as small as we thought," Charlie suggested. or as young. I checked the sensor as we walked. The temperature reading was 5 degrees warmer than it should be, and climbing the further inland we went. "There's definitely geothermal activity," I said. "These readings match what we were getting from the ship. The center of the island is unnaturally hot." After about an hour of hiking, the dense forest opened into a clearing dominated by a massive stone formation. It rose about 30 feet high, roughly cylindrical, with a wide opening at the top where steam lazily drifted into the sky. "A volcanic chimney," I said, my voice barely containing my excitement. "Probably an ancient lava tube that's now serving as a vent for underground geothermal activity." "Is it dangerous?" Andrew asked, looking up at the steam. I checked the sensor. "No harmful gas readings. The heat signature is stable. I think it's dormant, just venting pressure and steam." "Look." Jack pointed to where a small stream emerged from the base of the formation, creating a pool before continuing downhill. "Water source." Charlie approached the pool cautiously, dipped his finger in, then tasted it. "It's fresh, warm, but not hot, and it doesn't taste like sulfur or other minerals." Relief washed through me. Water was our most pressing concern, and here it was, exactly where the satellite images had suggested. As the others filled the empty water bottles we'd salvaged, I circled the chimney, running my hand along its rough surface. The stone was smooth in places, almost as if it had been worked by tools. I told myself it was just natural erosion, but something about the pattern seemed deliberate. Subtle grooves that spiraled up from the base toward the opening. "Guys," Andrew called from the far side of the clearing. "I found something." We gathered around him. Half hidden by overgrown vegetation was what appeared to be a path, not a natural break in the foliage, but an actual trail, with stones placed to form rough steps leading away from the chimney. "Someone's been here," Jack said, stating the obvious. Charlie knelt to examine the path. "Recently, too, these plants have been cut back, maybe within the past year." My heart raced. The island was supposed to be uninhabited. That was part of what made it perfect for our research. No human interference to contaminate our data. "Let's follow it," I said. The path wound through the forest for about half a mile before opening onto another, smaller clearing. And there it was, unmistakable evidence of human presence. A small shed, roughly 10 feet square, made of weathered wood and corrugated metal. Vines had begun to reclaim it, but it was clearly a man-made structure. We approached cautiously. The door hung partially open on rusted hinges. "Hello?" Charlie called. No answer. Jack pushed the door fully open and peered inside. "It's empty, no people at least." We entered one by one. The interior was dim, with sunlight filtering through a single dirty window. What I saw made me freeze in place. The shed was a research station. Makeshift tables lined the walls, covered with equipment I didn't recognize. Strange brass and copper devices with dials and meters, glass containers connected by coiled tubes, and what looked like recording equipment, though unlike any I'd seen before. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. "What is this place?" Andrew whispered, as if afraid to disturb the silence. Charlie picked up a small device from one of the tables. "This looks military. Cold War era, maybe." Jack was examining the wall where maps had been pinned up, detailed topographical surveys of the island, with markings and annotations I couldn't read from where I stood. I moved to a desk in the corner where a leather-bound book lay open. A logbook. I carefully turned the pages, mindful of their fragility. The writing was dense, filling each page, but in a language I didn't recognize, not any European or Asian script I was familiar with. The characters were fluid, almost like they were moving on the page if I didn't focus directly on them. "Can anyone read this?" I asked, turning the book for the others to see. They gathered around, each shaking their head. "That's not any language I know," Charlie said, frowning. "Maybe a cipher?" Andrew suggested. "A code to keep the research secret." I continued turning pages until I reached entries that included drawings, detailed sketches of the volcanic chimney we'd just found, cross-sections showing something beneath it, and diagrams of what might have been energy readings or wave patterns. The final pages contained a series of increasingly frantic-looking entries, the writing becoming more erratic, with entire sections crossed out or circled obsessively. "Whoever wrote this was losing it," Jack said quietly. Charlie had moved to a cabinet in the corner. When he opened it, we all tensed. Inside, lying on a dusty shelf, was a revolver. "Military for sure," he said, carefully picking it up. "Russian, I think. Old but well-maintained." He checked the cylinder. 6 rounds, all present. An uncomfortable silence fell over the shed. The gun was a stark reminder that whoever had been here before us had felt the need for protection. But from what? The island had no large predators. We'd confirmed that in our preliminary research. Jack continued searching the shed, pulling open drawers and examining equipment. From one drawer, he removed a small metal case. "More bullets," he said, opening it to reveal neat rows of ammunition. Charlie pocketed the revolver and the case of bullets, catching my questioning look. "Better to have it and not need it," he said simply. I turned back to the logbook, taking photos with the tablet that had miraculously dried out overnight. Whatever language this was, I hoped we might be able to translate it once we were rescued. The book felt important, a key to understanding what had happened here before. "Look at these," Andrew said, pointing to a series of jars on a shelf. Each contained specimens preserved in fluid, plant samples from the island, strange sea creatures I didn't recognize, and what appeared to be soil samples layered in glass tubes. "This was a comprehensive research operation," I said. "Someone was studying the island systematically, just like we planned to do." "And where are they now?" Charlie asked quietly. No one had an answer for that. We spent the next hour cataloging what we found in the shed. Most of the equipment was unfamiliar or too specialized for us to understand its purpose. The maps proved valuable, though, detailed topographical surveys that would help us navigate the island far better than our limited satellite imagery. "We should take what we can use and head back to camp," Charlie suggested as the afternoon wore on. "We can make a better shelter near the water source." I nodded, though I was reluctant to leave the shed and its mysteries. "Let's gather the maps, any tools that still work, and the logbook. We can come back tomorrow to study the rest." As we prepared to leave, I noticed Andrew had gone quiet, staring at one of the maps on the wall. "What is it?" I asked. He pointed to a section of coastline marked with a symbol I hadn't noticed before, a spiral pattern with radiating lines. "That's where we made camp," he said, "right where the Eleanor went down. See the depth markings? It's the only place around the entire island where the seafloor suddenly drops off like that." I studied the map. He was right. Our shipwreck wasn't random. We'd been caught in what appeared to be an unusual undersea formation that created treacherous currents exactly where we'd been taking readings. "Coincidence," Charlie said, though he didn't sound convinced. Jack had found a backpack and was filling it with useful items, a first aid kit, some tools, a compass that still worked. "Should we take all this back to camp?" Andrew asked, gesturing to the specimens and equipment. I shook my head. "Let's leave it here for now. It's survived this long. It'll be here when we come back." As we left the shed, I found myself looking back, drawn to its secrets. The logbook felt heavy in my pack, its unknown language like a whisper I couldn't quite hear. We made our way back to the volcanic chimney and decided to make camp there. The water source was too valuable to leave, and the clearing provided enough space for a proper shelter. Jack and Charlie set about constructing something more substantial than our beach lean-to, using the additional sail material and vines from the surrounding forest. While they worked, I sat with the logbook, studying its pages in the fading afternoon light. The language continued to elude me, but the drawings told their own story. The island had been studied before, perhaps decades ago. Someone had discovered its secrets, the unnatural heat, the strange vegetation, the magnetic anomalies, and something had happened to them. "Find anything useful?" Charlie asked, sitting beside me after finishing the shelter. I showed him a page where the unknown researcher had drawn a cross-section of the island, with the volcanic chimney at its center and what appeared to be chambers or caverns beneath. They were mapping the subsurface, I said. Look, these could be lava tubes or some kind of natural formation underneath us. Charlie studied the drawing with a frown. Or they could be the ravings of someone going stir-crazy on an isolated island. Those last entries looked pretty unstable. But what if they're not? I couldn't keep the excitement from my voice. What if there's an entire network down there? It would explain the heat signatures, the unusual electromagnetic readings we've been getting for years. Sarah, Charlie's voice held a warning. We need to focus on survival, not on chasing theories. We have water now, but we still need food, better shelter, and a way to signal for rescue. I knew he was right, but the mystery pulled at me. The Foundation was wrong about this place, Charlie. They said it was nothing special, just another volcanic island. But look around us. The vegetation, the heat, this logbook. Someone knew this island was worth studying, worth protecting with a gun. And where are they now? Charlie repeated his question from earlier. I had no answer, but the question sent a chill through me despite the warm air. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across our new camp, Jack managed to start another fire. We rationed out more of our emergency supplies for dinner, all too aware of how quickly they were dwindling. Tomorrow, we should look for food sources, Jack said. I saw what might be fruit trees further inland. Andrew nodded. And we could try fishing. The lagoon on the north side looked promising on those maps. I half listened to their planning, my mind still on the logbook and its secrets. The unknown language nagged at me. It wasn't like any cipher or code I'd seen before. The characters had a fluid quality, almost organic in their forms. Some pages contained what looked like notations for sound, waveforms and patterns that reminded me of audio spectrograms. I'll take first watch, Charlie offered as darkness fell. He patted his pocket where the revolver now resided. Get some sleep, Sarah. You look exhausted. I hadn't realized how tired I was until he mentioned it. The day's discoveries and the physical exertion of hiking through the dense forest had taken their toll. I retreated to our new shelter, bringing the logbook with me. As I lay in the darkness, listening to the strange sounds of the island night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd stumbled onto something significant. The abandoned research station, the mysterious logbook, the unnatural ecosystem around us, all pointed to a secret this island had kept hidden until now. The Foundation had denied my requests for a proper expedition because they claimed there was nothing special about Island B212. But I'd known better. The readings we'd collected over 2 years told a different story. One of anomalies that defied explanation, patterns that broke the rules of isolated ecosystem development. Now I had proof. Something was happening on this island, something worth studying, worth understanding. I closed my eyes, the logbook clutched to my chest. Tomorrow we would focus on survival needs, food, better shelter, signals for rescue. But the island's secrets were here, waiting to be uncovered. And unlike our mysterious predecessors, I wasn't going to disappear without solving the puzzle. The logbook pressed against my chest as I drifted to sleep, its strange symbols and diagrams burning in my mind like afterimages. The sounds of the island, rustling leaves, distant water, and unidentifiable calls from the darkness created a disorienting lullaby that pulled me down into unconsciousness. Then I was underwater. Not drowning, but breathing somehow, suspended in midnight blue depths. Pale light filtered from somewhere above, casting weak, dancing patterns across a landscape that defied explanation. Massive stone structures rose from an ocean floor I couldn't see, twisted columns and archways covered in glowing symbols similar to those in the logbook. Living structures that might have been coral pulsed with bioluminescence, but their shapes were wrong. Too geometric, too intentional. I floated toward one of the structures, drawn by its soft, pulsing light. As I got closer, I realized the light came from thousands of tiny creatures moving in perfect synchronization. They formed patterns on the structure's surface, circles, spirals, and complex geometric designs that kept shifting and rebuilding themselves. A shadow moved in my peripheral vision, something massive. I turned slowly, the water thick around me. It emerged from behind a distant column, a creature larger than anything I'd seen before. Its body was a shifting mass of appendages and eyes that opened and closed across its surface. The central mass alone was the size of a bus, with tentacles stretching outward for what seemed like hundreds of feet, moving with impossible grace through the water. What struck me most weren't its size or strange anatomy, but the unmistakable intelligence in its movements. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. It moved with purpose, with awareness, and it saw me. Dozens of eyes across its surface turned in my direction. I tried to flee but remained suspended in place as the creature approached. One massive eye, at least 5 feet across, opened at the front of its central mass and fixed directly on me. I felt a pressure inside my head, not painful, but intense, like something was reaching into my mind, sifting through my thoughts, my memories. Images flashed behind my eyes. The research station, the logbook, our shipwreck, the volcanic chimney. The creature moved closer, tentacles flowing around me, but never touching. Its giant eye never blinked. The pressure in my head intensified. A message formed in my mind, not in words, but in concepts, emotions, and images too complex to fully comprehend. You see now, others saw, others fled. I woke gasping, my body drenched in sweat despite the cool night air. The dream felt more substantial than reality, a visitation rather than a nightmare. I sat up, my heart pounding as I tried to make sense of what I'd experienced. The logbook had fallen open beside me, and in the dim, pre-dawn light, its symbols seemed to shift on the page like the patterns formed by those underwater creatures. Charlie was still on watch by the fire, his back to me. I didn't call out to him. What could I say? That I dreamed of an impossible underwater city with a creature that spoke directly into my mind? He already thought I was too obsessed with the island's mysteries. I lay back down, staring at the makeshift shelter above me. Sleep wouldn't return, so I watched as night gradually yielded to dawn, the dream images refusing to fade like normal dreams should. When the others woke, I pretended I'd slept well. We ate the last of our protein bars and planned our day. Jack and Andrew would try fishing at the lagoon shown on our maps while Charlie and I searched for edible plants. "You look tired," Charlie said as we hiked through the dense vegetation, following one of the paths marked on the map. "Trouble sleeping?" I considered lying, but decided on a partial truth. "Strange dreams. Probably stress from everything that's happened." "What kind of dreams?" He pushed aside a large frond blocking our path. "Underwater," I admitted, like I was deep in the ocean, but could breathe. Charlie nodded. "Makes sense. The shipwreck is still fresh in our minds. If only it had been that simple." The dream hadn't felt like my subconscious processing trauma. It had felt like contact. We spent the morning collecting fruit from trees that resembled nothing I'd seen before. The fruit itself was unremarkable, similar to small papayas but with blue flesh, and tasted pleasant enough that we believed it safe to eat. Charlie located more freshwater sources marked on the map, confirming that survival, at least in terms of basic needs, wouldn't be our most pressing concern. Throughout the day, fatigue dragged at me. My mind kept returning to the underwater city, the massive intelligent creature, and its cryptic message. "You see now, others saw, others fled." Were others the researchers who had abandoned the station? Had they encountered the same entity? The final frantic entries in the logbook suggested someone losing their grip on reality, or someone trying to process an impossible truth. That night, we reunited with Jack and Andrew, who had succeeded in catching several fish from the lagoon. The fishing was too easy. Jack said as he cooked our catch over the fire. "They practically jumped into our hands. Never seen anything like it." "This whole island is like nothing we've seen before," Andrew added. "Those plants we documented today, they shouldn't exist. The evolutionary path required to produce them would take millions of years in isolation." "Maybe that's what the previous researchers were studying," I suggested, trying to steer the conversation toward the mysteries we'd uncovered. The unique ecosystem. "Or maybe they were studying the volcanic activity," Charlie countered, giving me a pointed look that said he knew what I was doing. "This island is still relatively young, geologically speaking. The chimney might be their focus." I decided not to press the issue. My mind felt foggy from lack of proper sleep, and I needed to conserve my energy for the inevitable return of the dreams that night. I wasn't disappointed. When sleep finally came, I found myself back in that underwater realm, but in a different location. This time I drifted through what appeared to be the ruins of a vast structure, a temple or palace with walls that curved inward to form a dome hundreds of feet high. The walls were covered in the same fluid symbols from the logbook, but here they glowed with internal light, pulsing in sequences that almost seemed like communication. At the center of this dome was a pit that descended into darkness. I floated toward it, drawn by a force I couldn't resist. As I approached the edge, I could see movement in the depths, massive shapes shifting in darkness so complete it seemed to absorb the surrounding light. Something rose from that darkness, not the creature from before, but a swarm of smaller entities that moved with a collective intelligence. They surrounded me, thousands of translucent, jellyfish-like beings no larger than my hand, each containing a single glowing orb at its center. They began to synchronize, their movements becoming a dance around me. Their lights pulsed in patterns that matched the glowing symbols on the walls. A message was being conveyed, but I couldn't decipher it. Then they parted, forming a corridor that led to the edge of the pit. An invitation. I hesitated, but found myself moving forward, looking down into the abyss. From the darkness, a voice that wasn't a voice. "The surface and depths are separated by more than water. Your kind sees only reflections. We show you truth." The darkness below seemed to reach up toward me, not as water or shadow, but as something alive, a consciousness extending tendrils toward my mind. I woke with a gasp, sitting upright. Andrew, who had taken the night's final watch, looked over with concern. "Bad dream?" he asked, his voice low to avoid waking the others. "Something like that." I rubbed my eyes, which felt gritty with exhaustion. "Want to talk about it?" He added more wood to the fire, which had burned low. I hesitated. Andrew was the most open-minded of our group, his scientific curiosity untainted by Charlie's pragmatism or Jack's blunt skepticism. If anyone would listen without immediate dismissal, it would be him. "I've been having these dreams," I started, moving to sit beside him by the fire. "But they don't feel like normal dreams. They're too consistent, too vivid." Andrew nodded encouragingly. "I'm underwater, in some kind of ancient city with architecture unlike anything human, and there are creatures there, intelligent ones. They're trying to communicate with me." The words sounded ridiculous spoken aloud, but Andrew didn't laugh. "What do they say?" he asked, his expression thoughtful. "Not words, exactly. More like concepts, images, emotions. Last night, one of them said something about others seeing and fleeing. I think it meant the researchers who were here before us." Andrew was quiet for a moment, considering. "You know, the volcanic gases from that chimney could be affecting our minds. Carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, even some hallucinogens can be present in volcanic emissions." "You think I'm hallucinating?" "I think our brains are remarkable organs that can create incredibly detailed experiences, especially under stress." He smiled gently. "But I also think this island is unlike anywhere I've studied, and I'm not willing to dismiss anything outright." His measured response was both comforting and disappointing. I wanted someone to validate the reality of what I was experiencing, but I also knew how it sounded. "Have you been sleeping okay?" I asked. Andrew shrugged. "Some weird dreams, but nothing like what you're describing. Mostly just anxiety stuff, being chased, falling, that sort of thing." The others began to stir as daylight strengthened. We prepared a breakfast of leftover fish and the blue fruit, then discussed our plans for the day. Jack wanted to improve our shelter, while Andrew suggested exploring more of the island's interior using the maps we'd found. "We should also try to figure out how to signal any passing ships," Charlie added. "We can't count on the emergency beacon alone." Throughout the discussion, I found it hard to focus. Exhaustion weighed on me, but it wasn't just physical tiredness. The dreams, or visions, had left me with a sense of paranoia that I couldn't shake. I kept glancing toward the volcanic chimney, expecting to see something emerge from its opening. Every shadow in the surrounding forest seemed to hide watching eyes. "Sarah, are you with us?" Charlie's voice cut through my thoughts. "Sorry, just tired." I forced myself to focus on the conversation. "I think exploring more of the island is our best move. The maps show what might be a high point on the northern ridge. If we can reach it, we'd have a better view of the surrounding ocean, maybe even spot passing ships." The others agreed, and soon we were hiking through the dense vegetation, following the paths marked on our maps. As we walked, I found myself lagging behind, my mind returning to the underwater city and its inhabitants. Your kind sees only reflections. We show you truth. What reflections? What truth? The cryptic messages nagged at me, feeling significant, yet just beyond comprehension. "Keep up, Sarah," Jack called back. "Easy to get lost in this growth." I quickened my pace, but the fatigue was making it difficult to maintain the others' speed. By midday, when we stopped to rest and eat some of the fruit we'd gathered, Charlie pulled me aside. "What's going on with you?" he asked quietly. "You're distracted, sluggish. This isn't like you, especially when we're exploring new territory." "I told you, I'm not sleeping well." "It's more than that." His eyes searched mine. "You've been staring at that logbook every chance you get. You jump at shadows. Something's gotten under your skin." I considered deflecting again, but Charlie deserved more than that. We'd worked together for 5 years. He knew when I was hiding something. "The dreams I mentioned? They're intense, Charlie, not normal stress dreams. I'm in an underwater city with these beings. They communicate with me, show me things, and when I wake up, it doesn't fade like dreams should. It stays with me." Charlie frowned. "Andrew mentioned your conversation this morning. He's concerned." "About my mental state?" I couldn't keep the defensive edge from my voice. "About all of us." Charlie looked toward the volcanic chimney, visible through the trees. "He thinks the gases from that vent might be affecting our minds, creating hallucinations, paranoia." "Is that what you think?" He sighed. "I think we're all under extreme stress, in an unfamiliar environment, breathing air with unknown chemical compositions. So yeah, it's possible." "But you don't believe me." It wasn't a question. "I believe you're experiencing something intense, whether it's communication from underwater aliens or your brain's response to trauma and unusual atmospheric conditions. I'm less certain." His skepticism stung, but I couldn't blame him. If our positions were reversed, I'd probably offer the same rational explanation. We rejoined the others and continued our hike to the northern ridge. The climb was steep, with the path occasionally disappearing altogether, forcing us to create our own route through the dense vegetation. By the time we reached the summit, the sun was already beginning its descent toward the horizon. The view was worth the effort. From this height, we could see the entire island, the volcanic chimney at its center, the dense forest covering most of the landmass, the beaches where we'd washed ashore, and endless ocean in all directions. The isolation of our position hit me anew. No ships in sight, no contrails in the sky, nothing but blue water stretching to the horizon. "So much for spotting passing ships," Jack said, voicing what we all felt. Andrew had brought the maps and was comparing them to the landscape below. "Look," he said, pointing to a section of the island we hadn't yet explored. "There's another clearing on the eastern side, with what looks like more structures. Maybe another research station? Or maybe the main station," I suggested, moving to examine the map. "The shed we found could have been just an outpost." "Worth investigating tomorrow," Charlie agreed. "For now, we should head back before we lose the light." As we prepared to descend, I took one last look at the island spread below us. From this height, I could see patterns in the vegetation, circular formations, lines radiating outward from the central chimney. They looked natural at first glance, but the longer I stared, the more intentional they seemed. Like the symbols in the logbook, like the patterns formed by those underwater creatures. "Do you see that?" I asked, pointing to the patterns. The others looked where I indicated. "The different shades of green?" Jack asked. "Yeah, probably different plant species growing in rings based on soil conditions or distance from the volcanic heat." "No, the patterns. Look at how they form symbols, like the ones in the logbook." They looked again, exchanging glances. "I'm not seeing symbols, Sarah," Charlie said gently. "Just natural variation in the forest canopy." I stared harder, willing them to see what I saw so clearly: concentric circles, spirals, and complex geometric patterns formed by the different vegetation heights and colors. The entire island was a canvas of symbols, visible only from above, but their expressions told me they saw nothing unusual, just trees, plants, natural formations. My stomach tightened. Either they were blind to what was right in front of us, or I was seeing things that weren't there. The descent was made in relative silence. My mind raced, questioning my own perception. Was I simply finding patterns where none existed? Was my obsession with the island's mysteries causing me to project significance onto random natural formations? Or was I the only one able to see the truth? By the time we reached camp, darkness had fallen. Jack built up the fire while Andrew prepared more fish he'd caught earlier. I sat apart from the others, opening the logbook once more, studying its strange symbols by firelight. They seemed to shift and move on the page, forming new configurations before settling back into their original shapes. "You should eat something," Charlie said, bringing me a portion of fish. "And try to get some real sleep tonight. You're running on fumes." I nodded absently, accepting the food but returning my attention to the logbook. One page in particular drew me in, a diagram showing the island in cross-section, with the volcanic chimney at its center and what appeared to be chambers or tunnels beneath. What I had initially thought were natural formations, lava tubes or caves, now looked more like engineered spaces, with proportions too regular to be random. At the bottom of the island, the diagram showed a massive chamber opening into the ocean depths. "I need to get a geological sample from the chimney," I said suddenly. The others looked up from their meals. "What for?" Jack asked. "To analyze the mineral composition. If we could determine the volcanic type, it might help us understand the unusual heat signatures." The excuse sounded plausible enough. "That can wait until morning," Charlie said firmly. "You need rest." "I'm fine." I stood, swaying slightly as fatigue made the world tilt around me. Charlie was at my side immediately, steadying me. "You're exhausted, Sarah. Whatever samples you want can wait until you've slept." I wanted to argue, but my body betrayed me. 3 nights of interrupted sleep and vivid dreams had taken their toll. I allowed Charlie to guide me to our shelter, bringing the logbook with me. "Try to sleep without this tonight," he said, gently taking the book from my hands. "Give your mind a break." Too tired to protest, I let him take it. As I lay down, the exhaustion hit me like a physical weight, and I was asleep within minutes. The dream came immediately, more vivid than before. I was deeper underwater this time, in what I now recognized as the chamber shown in the diagram. a vast space carved into the base of the island, opening to the ocean floor. The walls were lined with the same glowing symbols, but here they moved continuously, flowing like liquid light. In the center of the chamber floated the massive creature I'd encountered before, but now I could see it more clearly. What I'd thought was a single entity was actually a collective. Thousands of smaller organisms moving in perfect synchronization to form a larger whole. They arranged and rearranged themselves constantly, forming appendages, sensory organs, and complex structures as needed. More surprising was what surrounded this central entity, dozens of human shapes suspended in the water. As I drifted closer, I could make out their features, men and women in clothing from different eras, some in what looked like naval uniforms from the mid-20th century, others in more modern attire. Their eyes were closed, bodies perfectly preserved, as if sleeping rather than drowned. I recognized one of them with a shock that sent me reeling backward. A man in his 50s with a graying beard, wearing a faded research jacket. The man from the photograph I'd seen pinned to the wall of the research shed, the previous expedition leader. The collective entity noticed my presence. It shifted, a portion of its mass reconfiguring to form a rough approximation of a human face, features suggested rather than detailed, made of countless smaller organisms arranged in formation. The pressure I knelt by the water's edge, watching the faint blue glow swirl through the stream. The patterns weren't random. They formed and reformed like a language written in light and movement. As I leaned closer, my hand dipped into the cool water, and the luminescent trails seemed to reach toward my fingers. "Sarah, you up already?" Charlie's voice made me pull back quickly. I stood and wiped my wet hand on my pants, trying to look casual as he approached from our camp. "Just checking the water flow," I said. "It seems different this morning." Charlie looked down at the stream, then back at me with a puzzled expression. "Looks the same to me." I followed his gaze. The water now appeared normal, clear and colorless, with no sign of the blue swirls I'd seen moments before. Had I imagined it, or was it something only I could see? "Must have been a trick of the light," I muttered. We walked back to camp together. Jack was already awake, adding wood to the fire while Andrew still slept in our shelter. The morning felt unnaturally still, with no breeze stirring the massive leaves around us and no sounds from the birds or insects that usually created a constant background noise. "Something feels off," Jack said as we joined him. He kept looking at the sky, which had taken on a yellowish tint. "Pressure's changing." Charlie followed his gaze. "Think we're in for some weather?" "Maybe." Jack tapped the makeshift barometer he'd fashioned from salvaged equipment. "The reading's been dropping all night." I looked toward the ocean. From our camp, we could just make out a sliver of water through the trees, and what I saw made me freeze. The horizon had darkened, not with normal clouds, but with a wall of something that looked more like smoke, black and purple and swirling with internal light. "That's not normal," I said, pointing. The others turned to look. Jack let out a low whistle. "I've seen some strange weather, but nothing like that," Charlie said. "We should secure everything. Could be a bad one." As we hurried to prepare, reinforcing our shelter, moving supplies to higher ground, gathering extra firewood, Andrew finally woke. He emerged from the shelter looking disoriented, his eyes unfocused. "Hey," he said, his voice oddly flat. "I had the strangest dream." "Tell us later," Charlie said, handing him a coil of vine rope we'd made. "Storm coming. Help us tie down the shelter." Andrew nodded, but seemed sluggish, as if moving through water. I watched him with concern as we worked. The sky continued to darken, the yellow tint giving way to deep greens and purples that cast an alien light over our camp. The air grew heavy, pressing against my skin. "Andrew, you okay?" I asked as he fumbled with a simple knot. He looked at me, blinking slowly. "I keep hearing music. Can't you hear it?" I listened carefully. The silence was even more complete now. No wind, no birds, no insects. Just the gentle burbling of the stream. No music. "What kind of music?" I asked. His face brightened. "Like nothing I've ever heard. It's beautiful. Like whale songs, but more complex, more intentional." A chill ran through me despite the warm air. Andrew was hearing something the rest of us couldn't, just as I was seeing patterns the others missed. "Maybe we should get inside," I suggested, taking his arm. His skin felt cold despite the humid heat. "It's getting closer," Jack called, pointing toward the ocean. The dark wall had advanced, now blotting out half the sky. Within it, lights pulsed and shifted, not lightning, but something that moved with purpose, forming patterns similar to those I'd seen in the stream. We retreated to our shelter just as the air began to vibrate, not with thunder or wind, but with something deeper, a resonance that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The ground itself seemed to pulse in time with the lights in the storm. "What the hell kind of storm is this?" Charlie muttered as we huddled together. The shelter walls shuddered with each pulse, but held. No one answered. We all knew this wasn't natural weather. The storm advanced with a deliberate slowness, the leading edge of darkness finally reaching our camp. When it passed overhead, the world outside our shelter turned black as night, broken only by the pulsing lights within the clouds. Then the sound came, not wind or rain or thunder, but a deep, rhythmic humming that matched the pulses of light. The same rhythm I'd felt beneath the island while sitting at the volcanic chimney. Andrew stood suddenly. "It's calling me," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Before any of us could react, he pushed aside the shelter flap and stepped outside. "Andrew, wait!" I scrambled after him, the others right behind me. Outside, the world had transformed. The storm had brought no rain, only this unnatural darkness shot through with moving light. Andrew stood in the clearing, his face tilted upward, arms slightly outstretched. The lights from the sky seemed to reach toward him, forming connections between cloud and man. "Andrew, get back inside," Charlie shouted, but his voice sounded muffled, as if coming through water. Andrew turned to us, and I gasped. His eyes reflected the lights above, swirling with the same patterns. He smiled, not his normal expression, but something too wide, too knowing. "I understand now," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonics that made it sound like multiple people speaking at once. "It's so beautiful underneath, so ancient, so alive." "He's lost it," Jack muttered. "The stress, the isolation." "No," I said quietly. "Something else is happening." As we watched, Andrew turned and walked toward the volcanic chimney, his movements fluid and purposeful. We followed, calling his name, but he didn't respond or look back. At the chimney, he stopped and placed both hands against the stone. The carved symbols began to glow with the same blue light I'd seen in the stream. The humming grew louder, resonating through the ground, through our bodies. "Andrew, step away from there." Charlie rushed forward, reaching for him. Andrew turned his head, just his head, at an angle that looked wrong, impossible. "They've been waiting so long," he said in that strange, layered voice. "Waiting for someone who can hear, who can see." Then, before Charlie could reach him, Andrew simply folded. There's no other way to describe it. His body seemed to compress and twist, slipping between the carved lines on the chimney's surface like water down a drain. In seconds, he was gone, leaving only his torn shirt and one shoe behind. Charlie reached the spot where Andrew had stood, hands frantically feeling the stone surface. "Andrew! Andrew!" Jack and I stood frozen, unable to process what we'd just witnessed. The storm continued to pulse overhead, but its rhythm had changed, faster now, almost triumphant. "Where did he go?" Jack's voice cracked. "People don't just disappear." But Andrew had. One moment there, the next gone, as if the stone had swallowed him whole. The next hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Charlie refused to believe what we'd seen, insisting that Andrew must have fallen into a hidden opening in the chimney. We searched every inch of the stone formation, looking for hidden caves or tunnels. Jack even climbed to the top and peered down into the steaming opening, but saw only darkness. "There must be an explanation," Charlie kept saying as we widened our search to the surrounding forest. "People don't vanish into solid rock." We searched until darkness made it impossible to continue. The storm had passed by then, leaving behind an unnaturally clear sky filled with stars. We gathered around our fire, exhausted and shell-shocked. Andrew's absence left a gaping hole in our small group. "Maybe he's just lost," Jack suggested half-heartedly. "Wandered off in a daze. It happens to people under stress." "You saw what happened," I said quietly. "We all did." "I don't know what I saw," Charlie snapped, "but it wasn't a person being absorbed into stone. There has to be a rational explanation." "Like what?" I asked. "What rational explanation covers any of this? The storm with lights inside it, Andrew's eyes, the way he spoke?" Charlie had no answer. We ate in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. When it came time to sleep, no one wanted to be alone. We all crowded into our shelter, leaving a space where Andrew should have been. Sleep took a long time to come. Every sound from the forest made us tense, expecting Andrew to return, or whatever had taken him to come for us next. When I finally drifted off, the dreams came immediately. I was back in the underwater realm, but deeper than before. The massive chamber I'd previously visited was now above me as I descended through a series of tunnels that spiraled downward. The walls glowed with blue light, illuminating symbols identical to those on the volcanic chimney. At the bottom of this spiral was another chamber, smaller but somehow more intense, a concentrated point of energy. In its center floated Andrew, but not Andrew as I'd known him. His body had changed, becoming more fluid, his skin translucent. Through it, I could see new structures forming, organs or systems that weren't human. His eyes were open, filled with the same swirling light I'd seen during the storm. Around him moved shadowy forms with tentacle-like appendages, not threatening or violent, but careful, precise. They were changing him, remaking him. Or perhaps he was changing himself, guided by their knowledge. He saw me watching and smiled. His mouth didn't move, but his voice echoed in my mind. "They're helping me understand, helping me transform. You could join us, Sarah. You're already halfway here." I tried to ask if he was in pain, if he was afraid. He seemed to sense my questions. Pain is a limitation of our former shape. Fear is ignorance of what comes next. I know now. I see. The tentacled shadows moved around him, drawing him deeper. One reached toward me, not threatening, but inviting. I recoiled, and Andrew's expression turned sad. "Not ready yet." "That's okay. They've waited millennia. They can wait for you." He began to sink, pulled gently downward by the shadows. I tried to follow, but couldn't move. The last I saw of Andrew was his face, serene and transformed, as the darkness below enveloped him. I woke gasping, my body drenched in sweat. Charlie and Jack still slept beside me, undisturbed by my nightmare. But it hadn't been just a nightmare. It felt as real as my previous visions, maybe more so. I slipped out of the shelter into the pre-dawn light. The world seemed normal again. Birds called in the distance, insects hummed in the undergrowth. But everything had changed. Andrew was gone, taken by whatever lived beneath the island. And in my dream, he had been changing, becoming something else. I made my way to the volcanic chimney, drawn to the spot where Andrew had vanished. In the growing light, I could see his torn shirt still lying on the ground. I picked it up, running my fingers over the fabric. It was the only proof he had existed at all. The carved symbols on the chimney's surface looked ordinary now. No glow, no movement. Just ancient markings etched into stone. Yet I knew what lay beneath, what waited in the darkness. "Find anything?" I turned to see Charlie standing behind me. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, his face haggard. "No," I said. "Just his shirt." Charlie took it from me, his hands shaking slightly. "We need to keep searching. He could be hurt, confused, hiding somewhere." I didn't argue. Charlie needed to believe there was a rational explanation, that Andrew might still be alive and whole somewhere on the island. I couldn't take that hope from him, even knowing what I'd seen in my dream. We woke Jack, ate a quick breakfast of fruit, and began another search. We moved in widening circles from the chimney, calling Andrew's name until our voices grew hoarse. We checked the research station, the lagoon, the beach where we'd first washed ashore. Nothing. By midday, even Charlie's determination was flagging. "It doesn't make sense," he kept saying. "Where could he have gone? The island isn't that big." I wanted to tell him about my dream, to explain that Andrew wasn't on the island anymore, at least not in any way we could reach. But how could I explain something I barely understood myself? We returned to camp as the sun began its descent. Jack focused on practical matters, as he always did in times of stress. "We need to recalculate our rations," he said. 3 people instead of 4 means supplies will last longer, but we should still be careful." Charlie shot him an angry look. "He's not dead. We're not dividing up his share." "I didn't say he was," Jack replied calmly. "But we need to be realistic about our situation." Their argument continued, voices growing louder. I tuned them out, my attention drawn to the stream flowing from the volcanic chimney. The blue swirls were back, moving in complex patterns. And now I could hear what Andrew had described. A faint, beautiful music just at the edge of perception, like whale songs, but more structured, more intentional. The island was communicating again, but more openly now. Andrew's disappearance had changed something, broken a barrier, perhaps. That night, as we sat around the fire in silence, I made a decision. I would tell them about my dreams, about the entity beneath the island. They deserved to know, especially now that Andrew was gone. Whether they believed me or not, I had to try. "I need to tell you both something," I started. They looked up, pulled from their own dark thoughts. "Since we arrived, I've been having dreams, but they're not normal dreams. They're communications from something that lives beneath the island." Charlie sighed. "Sarah, we talked about this. The volcanic gases." "It's not the gases," I said firmly. "Listen to me. There's an intelligence down there. Ancient, vast. It's been trying to contact us. That's what the storm was about yesterday. That's what happened to Andrew." "What happened to Andrew?" Jack asked quietly. "It took him. Or he went willingly, I'm not sure. But he's down there now, changing." "Changing how?" Charlie's voice had an edge to it. "Becoming something else. Something not human." Charlie stared at me for a long moment, then stood abruptly. "I'm not listening to this. Andrew is lost or injured, not abducted by some undersea monster." "Charlie, please." I reached for his arm, but he pulled away. "No, this is exactly what I was worried about. You're so desperate to find something extraordinary on this island that you're creating fantasies to explain a simple disappearance. You saw what happened." My voice rose in frustration. "You saw him vanish into the stone." "I saw a man in the middle of a nervous breakdown wander off during a strange storm. Nothing more." Jack had remained silent, watching our exchange with an unreadable expression. Now he spoke, his voice measured. "Sarah, you have to admit this is hard to believe. An intelligence beneath the island? Communications through dreams? It sounds crazy?" I finished for him. "I know how it sounds. But it's happening. The logbook, the symbols on the chimney, the patterns in the vegetation that you can't see. It's all connected. And Andrew heard it too, at the end. He heard the music." Charlie shook his head. "I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow we keep searching, for Andrew, not for undersea civilizations." He retreated to our shelter. Jack stayed by the fire, studying me carefully. "You really believe this, don't you?" he asked. "I do," I said simply. "I know it's asking a lot for you to believe it too. But something is happening here that science can't easily explain. I'm just trying to understand it before what?" I didn't know how to answer. Before more of us disappeared? Before whatever lay beneath decided to take us all? "Just think about it," I said finally. "Watch for the patterns. Listen for the music. It's all around us now." Jack nodded, though I could tell he remained skeptical. We sat in silence for a while longer before he too went to the shelter, leaving me alone by the fire. I took out the logbook, opening it to the pages with drawings of the island's subsurface. What I had initially thought were natural formations, lava tubes and caves, now clearly appeared to be engineered spaces, constructed with purpose. The massive chamber at the bottom, opening to the ocean depths, was where the entity resided, where Andrew now was. The breach must be sealed or opened fully. You will decide. The entity's words from my earlier dream echoed in my mind. What breach? The volcanic chimney. The connection between our world and theirs. And why me? Why was I chosen to decide? I stayed by the fire until it burned low, wrestling with questions that had no clear answers. The stars above seemed to pulse in time with the blue swirls in the nearby stream, creating patterns I almost understood. Science had always been my foundation, my framework for understanding the world. I'd built my career on the belief that with enough data, enough analysis, everything could be explained. But what was happening on this island defied those principles. It demanded a different kind of understanding, one that embraced the impossible, the inexplicable. Andrew was gone. Not lost, not hidden. Gone in a way that rational thought couldn't account for. And part of me feared that his fate was just the beginning. As I finally made my way to the shelter where Charlie and Jack slept, I realized I stood at a crossroads. I could cling to scientific rationality, searching for explanations that would never come. Or I could accept what was happening, embrace the mystery, and try to understand it on its own terms. The choice terrified me, because accepting the reality of what lived beneath the island meant acknowledging that everything I thought I knew about the world was incomplete at best, wrong at worst. It meant stepping into uncertainty, into a reality where dreams could be communications and people could be absorbed into stone. I lay down in my spot, leaving the empty space where Andrew should have been. Sleep didn't come for a long time. When it did, I half expected to return to the underwater chamber, to see Andrew again in his transformed state. Instead, I dreamed of nothing at all, a darkness as complete as the one that had swallowed him. I woke to a scream, not my own, not outside the shelter. Charlie sat up next to me, his voice trailing into a strangled gasp as he came fully awake. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool morning air. "You okay?" I asked, my voice rough with sleep. He looked at me, eyes wild for a moment before recognition filtered in. "Yeah, bad dream." He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Andrew was... He was calling my name from inside the rock. Jack was already up, crouched at the shelter entrance. He gave Charlie a long look before turning away. "Sun's up, we should get moving." Outside, the island looked peaceful, almost mockingly so after what had happened with Andrew. Birds called to each other in the towering canopy. Insects buzzed. The small stream gurgled as it always had. I studied the water carefully, but saw no blue glow, heard no strange music. We ate in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Charlie kept looking toward the volcanic chimney, then quickly away, as if afraid it might pull him in too. Jack sat with his back deliberately turned to it, cleaning a fish he'd caught earlier. "We need a plan," I said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "For when rescue comes." "If it comes," Charlie muttered. "It will," I insisted. "But we need to decide what to tell them about Andrew." Jack looked up from his work. "Tell them he disappeared. That's the truth. And when they ask how," Charlie challenged, when they want details. Neither Jack nor I answered immediately. How could we explain what we'd seen? What would we say when rescue personnel wanted to search the island? "We'll say he wandered off," Charlie continued, his voice hardening. "Got disoriented after the shipwreck. It happens." "That's not what happened," I said quietly. Charlie's eyes locked onto mine, a dangerous edge in them. "It's the only explanation that makes sense, the only one that won't get us locked up for psychological evaluation." "So we lie?" Jack asked. "We simplify," Charlie corrected, "for our own good." The conversation died there, but the tension remained as we went about our morning tasks. I noticed Jack watching Charlie with growing concern. I was watching him too, the steady, calm leader who had helped hold us together after the shipwreck was eroding, replaced by someone jumpy and suspicious. Around midday, I walked to the beach to check if our signal fire was still ready. Jack joined me, keeping his voice low. "Charlie's not right," he said, looking back toward camp to make sure we weren't overheard. "I know," I admitted. "He's struggling with what happened to Andrew. We all are, but he's—" Jack paused, searching for words. "He's changing. Have you noticed how he keeps checking his hands and talking to himself when he thinks we can't hear?" I had noticed. Small behaviors that might have seemed insignificant separately, but together painted a worrying picture. "Maybe you were right," Jack continued, "about the island, about something affecting us." I looked at him in surprise. "You believe me now?" He shrugged, uncomfortable with the admission. "I don't know what I believe anymore, but Andrew is gone, and Charlie is whatever he is, and I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eye, movements that shouldn't be there." A chill ran through me. "What kind of movements?" "Like the plants are moving when there's no wind, like they're watching." He gave a self-deprecating laugh. "See, I sound crazy too." "Not crazy," I said. "The island is affecting us all, just in different ways." We walked back to camp in silence, both glancing occasionally at the vegetation around us. Was it my imagination, or did the massive ferns turn slightly to track our movement? Did the flowering vines curl inward as we passed, like fingers closing? Charlie was sitting by the fire, the Russian revolver from the research station disassembled on a piece of cloth before him. His fingers moved methodically, cleaning each part with precise care. "What are you doing?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Maintaining our only weapon," he replied without looking up. "We might need it." "Against what?" Jack asked. Charlie's hands paused briefly. "Whatever took Andrew." The afternoon stretched into evening with growing unease. Charlie finished with the gun and tucked it into his belt. He kept pacing the perimeter of our camp, stopping occasionally to stare intently at ordinary objects, a tree, a rock, our water containers, as if seeing something we couldn't. "We should eat," I suggested as darkness approached. Jack had caught more fish earlier, and we had gathered fruit. Charlie hadn't eaten all day. "Not hungry," Charlie muttered, still pacing. "You need to keep up your strength," Jack said, holding out a piece of cooked fish. "Come on, man." Charlie stared at the offered food for a long moment, then at Jack's face. "Where were you this morning? Before we woke up?" Jack frowned. "Fishing, like I said." "Alone? By the water?" "Yeah. Where else would I fish?" Charlie took the food but didn't eat it, setting it aside. "Did you hear anything? See anything?" Jack exchanged a glance with me. "Just fish." Charlie nodded slowly, clearly not believing him. The air around our camp felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. I ate in tense silence, watching Charlie watch Jack. There was calculation in his eyes now, a suspicion that hadn't been there before. Jack noticed it too, his body language growing more guarded. "I'll take first watch tonight," Charlie announced. "You sure?" I asked. "You didn't sleep well last night." "I'm sure." His hand rested on the gun at his belt. "You two get some rest." Jack and I retreated to the shelter, but neither of us made any move to sleep. We sat side by side in the darkness, listening to Charlie's footsteps as he circled the camp. "He shouldn't have that gun," Jack whispered. "Not in his current state." I nodded, though he could barely see me in the dark. "What do we do?" "Wait until he falls asleep, then take it." But Charlie didn't sleep. All night, he paced. I dozed occasionally, only to jerk awake at some small sound. Jack remained vigilant beside me, tense as a coiled spring. Dawn came with no relief from the tension. Charlie stood at the edge of our camp, staring into the forest, the gun still at his belt. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn. "I'm going to get water," Jack announced, standing and stretching as if he'd slept well. Charlie's head snapped around. "I'll come with you." Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." I watched them walk toward the stream, Charlie following a few paces behind, his hand never far from the gun. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something was very wrong. I waited until they were out of sight, then followed quietly, staying hidden among the massive ferns. At the stream, Jack knelt to fill our water containers, while Charlie stood guard, eyes scanning the forest. Then Charlie froze, staring at something in the water. I followed his gaze but saw nothing unusual. Just clear water flowing over rocks. "Do you see that?" Charlie asked, his voice tight. Jack looked up from his task. "See what?" "In the water, the blue light." My breath caught. The blue swirls I'd seen before, Charlie was seeing them now. Jack looked confused. "There's no light, Charlie. It's just water." Charlie's expression hardened. "Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying," Jack said slowly, rising to his feet. "There's nothing there." "It's all over you too," Charlie continued, his voice rising. "On your hands, your face, the same light." Jack took a step back. "Charlie, you need to calm down. You're not seeing things clearly." "I see fine," Charlie snapped, drawing the gun. "Better than before. You went in the water, didn't you? The morning Andrew disappeared. You were at the lagoon." Jack raised his hand slowly. "Put the gun down. We can talk about this." "It got to you," Charlie continued, the gun shaking slightly in his hand. "Through the water. Changed you like it changed Andrew." I had to intervene. I stepped out from my hiding place. "Charlie, stop. Jack is fine. He's still Jack." Charlie's head jerked toward me, the gun momentarily pointing in my direction before returning to Jack. "You don't understand. I can see it on him. The same light that was in Andrew's eyes. The same infection." "There is no infection," I said, moving slowly closer. "Charlie, you haven't slept. You're seeing things that aren't there." "Then why did you tell us about the blue light in the water?" he demanded. "Why did you say the island was communicating? Were you lying then, or are you lying now?" I stopped, caught in my own contradictions. I did see the light, but Jack doesn't have it. It's not on him." "You can't see it anymore," Charlie said with sudden clarity, "because it's in you too." Before I could respond, Jack lunged toward Charlie, trying to grab the gun. Charlie stumbled backward, tripped on a rock, and fell, the gun discharging with a deafening crack that echoed across the clearing. Jack collapsed, clutching his stomach where a dark stain spread rapidly across his shirt. "No!" I screamed, rushing to Jack's side as Charlie scrambled away, still holding the gun. Jack's breaths came in short gasps. Blood poured between his fingers. I pressed my hands over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Help me!" I shouted at Charlie, who stood frozen a few feet away. "We need to get him back to camp. The first aid kit." "Stay away from him," Charlie warned, the gun now pointed at me. "It'll spread to you if you touch his blood." "There's nothing to spread. He's hurt, Charlie. He's dying." Jack's eyes found mine, pain and fear mixing with something else. Resignation. His lips moved, forming words I had to lean close to hear. "He's right," Jack whispered. "I can hear it now. The music. It's beautiful." A chill ran through me. Jack's eyes had changed, reflecting a faint blue glow that hadn't been there before. The same glow I'd seen in Andrew's eyes before he disappeared. "Jack," I whispered, but he didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on something beyond me, beyond the forest itself. "See?" Charlie's voice trembled. "It's taking him, just like it took Andrew." Jack's body began to change beneath my hands, not dissolving or transforming in any dramatic way, but softening somehow, his edges becoming less distinct. The blood flowing from his wound changed too, darkening to an impossible blue-black that spread in patterns across his skin. I scrambled backward, unable to process what I was seeing. Jack's body continued to change, the blue-black patterns covering him completely now, his features smoothing out until he barely looked human. Then, between one heartbeat and the next, he simply faded. His substance seemed to sink into the ground, blue-black liquid seeping into the soil until nothing remained but his empty clothes and a dark stain where his blood had been. Charlie and I stared in shocked silence at the spot where Jack had been. The only sound was the gentle burbling of the stream and our ragged breathing. "I was right," Charlie whispered, lowering the gun slightly. "It infected him." I couldn't speak. My hands were covered in Jack's blood, or what had been his blood before it changed. I stumbled to the stream and plunged them into the water, scrubbing frantically. "Don't touch the water," Charlie shouted, but it was too late. As I watched, blue swirls formed around my hands, reaching toward my skin like curious fingers. I yanked my hands back, but the damage was done. I could feel it, a tingling sensation that spread up my arms, a whisper of music at the edge of my hearing. "It's in you now," Charlie said, backing away from me, the gun still in his hand. "You're infected too. Charlie, listen to me." I held out my wet hands, trying to look as normal as possible. "We need to stay together. We're all that's left." "Stay back," he continued, retreating, his eyes wide with terror. "I won't let it take me too." "Nothing's taking anyone," I lied, trying to sound calmer than I felt. "Jack was injured. He lost blood. I don't know what happened to his body, but we can figure it out. Together." Charlie shook his head. "You're not Sarah anymore. You're one of them now." He turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush toward camp. I let him go, knowing that following would only escalate the situation. Alone by the stream, I looked down at my hands. They appeared normal, no blue glow, no strange patterns. But inside, something had changed. The music Andrew had described, that Jack had heard in his final moments, now played faintly in my mind, a complex melody unlike anything human. And beneath that, a presence, vast, ancient, patient, watching, waiting. "What do you want from me?" I whispered to the stream, to the forest, to the island itself. No answer came in words, but the music shifted, becoming more intricate, more insistent. Patterns formed in the water, not random swirls, but organized symbols that matched those on the volcanic chimney in the logbook. Understanding bloomed in my mind, not as knowledge but as certainty. Andrew was gone, but not dead. Jack was gone, but not dead. They had been changed, absorbed, welcomed into something greater than themselves. And I was next. The water had marked me. The entity beneath the island had chosen me. Fear mixed with a strange, unwelcome fascination. Part of me, the scientist, the seeker, wanted to understand this transformation. Another part, the human, the survivor, recoiled from it. I stood on shaking legs and made my way back to camp, moving slowly through the forest. The plants seemed to reach toward me as I passed, brushing against my skin with what felt like deliberate touch. The whole island was alive, aware. At camp, Charlie had barricaded himself in our shelter, piling supplies against the entrance. I could see his face through a small opening, watching me with naked fear. "Charlie," I called softly. "I'm still me. Let me in." "Stay where you are," he answered, the gun visible in his trembling hand. Don't come any closer." I sank down by the cold remains of our fire, giving him space. The day stretched into afternoon, into evening, with neither of us moving. Charlie remained in the shelter, gun trained on me. I sat by the fire pit, trying to look unthreatening while the music in my head grew steadily louder. As darkness fell, I gathered enough courage to speak again. "Charlie, you can't stay in there forever. We need to work together to survive." His laugh was bitter, broken. "Survive? Like Andrew? Like Jack? That's not survival." "I don't know what happened to them," I admitted, "but I know we need each other." "I don't need anything from you," he hissed. "You're one of them now. I can see it in your eyes." I touched my face, wondering what he saw. My eyes felt normal to me, but perhaps they had changed like Andrew's, like Jack's in his final moments. The night deepened around us. Stars appeared overhead, their patterns seeming to match the symbols in the water on the chimney. The music in my head became a constant presence, no longer frightening but familiar, almost comforting. I must have dozed off because when I opened my eyes again, the first light of dawn was breaking through the trees. Charlie still watched from the shelter, but his eyes had the glazed look of extreme fatigue. "Charlie," I tried again, "you need to sleep. You need to eat. So you can take me while I'm weak?" His voice was hoarse. "No thanks." "Take you where, Charlie? I'm still here. I'm still me." "For now," he whispered, "but it's spreading inside you. I can see it." Perhaps he was right. The music had become so constant I barely noticed it anymore, like the sound of my own breathing. The forest around me seemed more alive, more connected than before. I could sense patterns and relationships I'd missed before, how the plants communicated through root systems, how animals moved through invisible trails of scent and sound. I was changing, but not in the way Charlie feared, not being taken over, but expanded, seeing more, understanding more. "I can help you understand," I offered. "What's happening to the island, to us? It's not what you think." "I know exactly what's happening," Charlie insisted. "This place, it's evil. It took Andrew. It took Jack. Now it's taking you." "Not evil," I corrected gently. "Just different. Ancient. They've been here long before us, Charlie. They're curious about us, trying to communicate." "They? Who the hell are they?" His grip on the gun tightened. I hesitated, unsure how to explain what I only partly understood myself. "The intelligence beneath the island, the one I told you about." "So, you admit it. You're working with them." "No, I'm trying to understand them. There's a difference." Charlie's face hardened. "No difference to me." We reached an impasse again. I retreated to the edge of the clearing, giving him space. Throughout the day, I tried several times to approach, to reason with him, but each attempt ended with the gun pointed at my chest and Charlie's increasingly unhinged warnings. By the second night, I knew we couldn't continue this way. Charlie hadn't eaten or slept in 2 days. He was growing weaker, more irrational. The gun never left his hand. I built a small fire a safe distance from the shelter, hoping its warmth might lure him out. As flames illuminated the clearing, I noticed movement at the edge of the forest. The plants were shifting, branches bending, leaves turning, not from wind, but with purpose. The island was watching us, waiting for something. Charlie saw it too. "They're coming," he whispered, his voice cracking with fear. "They're coming for me." "Nothing's coming," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "It's just the plants moving." "Plants don't move on their own," he shouted, his composure finally breaking. He fired the gun into the forest, the shot deafeningly loud in the night air. "Stay back, stay away from me." I ducked behind a rock as he fired again and again until the cylinder clicked empty. In the sudden, I watched Charlie sleep through what remained of the night, his face finally peaceful after days of paranoid vigilance. The gun lay far from his reach, though I doubted he had the strength to use it again even if he woke. Exhaustion had claimed him so completely that he hadn't stirred once since collapsing. The music in my head continued, no longer intrusive but familiar, like a song I'd known all my life but somehow forgotten. It wove through my thoughts, connecting fragments of memories and observations. The blue glow in the water, Andrew's disappearance, Jack's transformation, the symbols on the volcanic chimney that matched the patterns in the logbook. As the first hints of dawn touched the sky, my eyelids grew heavy. I fought to stay awake, worried what Charlie might do if he woke alone, but the pull of sleep was too strong. The music seemed to encourage it, shifting to a slower, more hypnotic rhythm. "I need to stay awake," I muttered to myself, pinching my arm. But my body had other ideas. I drifted off sitting upright, my back against a tree trunk. This time, there was no gradual transition into the dream world. One moment I was in the clearing, the next I was somewhere else entirely. I stood at the base of the volcanic chimney, but it had changed. The stone surface glowed with blue light that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. The carved symbols moved and shifted like living things, rearranging themselves into new patterns that somehow made perfect sense to me. "Hello?" My voice echoed strangely, as if I'd spoken in a vast chamber rather than the open air. The ground beneath me turned transparent, allowing me to see downward through layers of rock and soil. What I'd thought were lava tubes and caves were actually organs and vessels, part of a living system that extended throughout the island's interior. The volcanic chimney wasn't a geological formation at all, but a breathing apparatus, drawing oxygen from the surface world into the vast body below. The island was alive, not just teeming with life, but itself a living entity. I should have been terrified, but instead felt a profound wonder. The blue light surrounded me, lifting me gently from the ground and drawing me into the chimney. I passed through solid stone as if it were mist, descending through a network of pulsing channels that carried nutrients and information throughout the island organism. Deeper I went, passing through chambers where smaller creatures tended to the needs of the greater body, entities that reminded me of the jellyfish-like beings from my previous dreams. They worked with purpose, maintaining the delicate balance of the entire system. I recognized Andrew among them, though he had changed dramatically. His form was fluid, only vaguely human-shaped, his substance transparent, and shot through with the same blue light that filled everything here. He noticed me and paused in his work, reaching out with what had once been a hand but was now more like a tendril of light. When he touched me, his thoughts flowed into mine, not ready for permanent joining yet, still bound to surface form, but seeing now, understanding. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice creating ripples in the light around us, maintaining, healing, living. He seemed at peace, content with his new existence. I wanted to ask more, but the current carried me onward, deeper into the heart of the island. Eventually, I reached a massive central chamber where the blue light originated. At its center floated an entity so vast and complex that my mind struggled to comprehend it. Not a single being, but a collective consciousness formed from countless smaller entities joined together in perfect harmony. It noticed me, its attention focusing like a spotlight. I felt naked, exposed, every memory, thought, and feeling laid bare before its ancient awareness. Images flashed through my mind, myself as a child, staring in wonder at the night sky, as a student, first learning about geological anomalies, as a researcher, fighting to get funding for this expedition, and finally, standing on the deck of the Eleanor just before the storm hit, looking toward Island B212 with eager anticipation. Then came other images, ones I hadn't experienced. The island as it was millions of years ago, rising from the ocean floor. The entity taking root there, growing slowly over countless millennia. Other humans discovering the island throughout history, some leaving quickly in fear, others staying to study, a few choosing to join with the entity and add their consciousness to its own. The collective consciousness spoke, Not in words, but in concepts that unfurled in my mind. You watched us, studied us, with respect, not greed, with wonder, not fear. I understood then why I'd been chosen. My years of research, analyzing the island's heat signatures and electromagnetic anomalies, what I'd thought was detached scientific observation had been perceived as something else by the entity. Attention, interest, respect. We have been waiting for one who seeks to understand, not to take. The entity showed me more, other expeditions I knew nothing about, military vessels testing weapons in these remote waters, research ships taking samples, drilling cores. Each time, the island had hidden its true nature, creating storms or electromagnetic disturbances to drive them away. But you came to know, so we let you see. A wave of gratitude washed over me. The entity's appreciation for being seen, for being acknowledged after eons of solitude or hostility. Then its mood shifted, darkening with concern. It showed me possible futures, research facilities built on the island, drilling equipment piercing the entity's body, military bases established to study and eventually weaponize its abilities. Humanity would not understand, would fear, would destroy. I saw warships surrounding the island, submarines monitoring its underwater portions, scientists in hazmat suits taking samples of the blue substance that was the entity's lifeblood, fear and greed driving them to dissect, analyze, weaponize. The images turned even darker, the entity defending itself, creating storms that sank ships, affecting the minds of researchers until they turned on each other. A war between worlds that neither side truly wanted. The truth cannot be known. Not yet. Your kind is not ready. I felt the weight of this knowledge pressing down on me. The entity was trusting me with its existence, its vulnerability, trusting me to protect it from my own species. What about Andrew and Jack? I asked. What happened to them? They chose to join, to become part of us. Their knowledge, experiences, memories, all preserved within the greater whole. The entity showed me Andrew and Jack, their consciousness still distinct within the collective but expanded, connected to something greater than themselves. They hadn't been consumed or destroyed. They'd been transformed, elevated. Then it showed me Charlie, his mind fracturing under the weight of experiences he couldn't process, his fear turning to violence. And it showed me a choice. I could join them, adding my consciousness to the collective, leaving my human form behind. Or I could return to the surface, to Charlie, to my human life, carrying the burden of this secret. The weight of this decision nearly crushed me. To join would mean accessing knowledge beyond human understanding, experiencing existence in ways I couldn't imagine. To return would mean isolation, carrying a truth I could never share. What do you want me to do? I asked. We do not command, we offer. Choice is yours. But I understood the unspoken message. If I chose to return, I would become a guardian of this secret, the only human who knew the truth and chose to protect it rather than expose it. A lifetime of silence. If I chose to join, Charlie would be left alone, broken and afraid, the last survivor. And if rescue ever came, there would be no one to protect the entity's secret. The blue light around me pulsed, waiting for my decision. In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what each choice would mean. To join was to gain everything I'd ever wanted as a scientist: knowledge, understanding, transcendence. To return was to give up that dream forever, to live with questions I could never answer, discoveries I could never share. I need to go back, I said finally. Someone needs to protect you. Gratitude flowed from the entity, warm and enveloping. It understood the sacrifice I was making. We will always be connected, even on the surface, even among your kind. The blue light around me began to fade as I rose back through the island's body, passing again through the chambers and channels I descended through. As I neared the surface, the entity shared one final thought. When it is time, when your life in that form ends naturally, you may return to us if you wish. Your place will wait." I emerged from the volcanic chimney back into my body, gasping as if I'd been underwater. The morning sun had fully risen, bathing the clearing in golden light that seemed pale and insufficient after the blue radiance I'd experienced below. Charlie still slept nearby, unaware of what had transpired. I looked at him with new understanding. His fear hadn't been irrational. He'd sensed the truth on some level, that we were in the presence of something beyond human comprehension, and his mind had broken under that knowledge. I touched my face, feeling tears I hadn't realized I was crying. The music in my head had quieted to a gentle hum, a reminder of the connection that would always be there. The entity was giving me space to process what I'd learned, to accept the burden I'd taken on. The island had chosen me because I'd chosen it first, spending years observing its anomalies with respect rather than dismissing them. And now I understood why the Foundation had denied my requests for a proper expedition. On some level, they must have suspected the truth, or at least enough of it to know the island should remain unstudied. I looked toward the horizon, imagining distant ships that might even now be responding to our emergency beacon. What would I tell them? What story could explain the disappearance of two men that wouldn't lead to a full investigation of the island? The knowledge sat heavy in my chest. Humanity wasn't ready for the truth. If the existence of the entity became known, it would be studied, experimented upon, eventually weaponized or destroyed. Fear would overwhelm wonder. Greed would overpower respect. Charlie stirred beside me, muttering in his sleep. I wiped my tears away, composing myself. When he woke, he would need me to be strong, to have answers he could accept. I had decided to become a guardian rather than a discoverer. The greatest scientific find in human history would remain my secret, my burden to carry alone. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had come to this island seeking knowledge, wanting to prove my theories were correct. Now I had more knowledge than I ever thought possible, but could never share it. The answers I'd fought so hard to find would die with me. As the sun climbed higher, I sat beside the sleeping Charlie and watched the island's plants sway gently in patterns only I could recognize as deliberate. The entity was everywhere, in the volcanic chimney, the water, the soil, the air, watching, waiting, trusting me with its existence. "I understand now," I whispered to the island, "and I won't tell them." The breeze that touched my face in response felt almost like a caress, a wordless thank you from an ancient consciousness that had been alone for too long. I sat beside Charlie as the morning light crept across our camp. He slept deeply, his face slack and peaceful for the first time in days, his chest rising and falling in the slow rhythm of exhaustion. The man who had threatened me with a gun, who had shot Jack in paranoid terror, now looked vulnerable, almost childlike. What would I tell him when he woke? What could I possibly say that would make sense of what had happened to us? The hum of the entity's presence lingered in my mind, quieter now, but still there, a constant companion I would never be rid of. I touched the soil beside me, feeling the subtle pulse of life beneath my fingertips. The island was alive in ways I could never have imagined before coming here, and now I alone carried that knowledge. "What have I done?" I whispered to myself. The choice I'd made in that blue-lit chamber beneath the island weighed on me. I'd chosen to return, to keep the entity's secret, to protect both it and humanity from each other. In doing so, I'd abandoned everything I believed in as a scientist. My entire career had been built on the principle that knowledge should be shared, that discoveries belonged to humanity as a whole. I'd fought against classification, against suppression of data, against the hoarding of information. I'd believed that understanding, no matter how challenging or paradigm-shifting, was always better than ignorance. Now, I'd chosen to become the very thing I once despised, a gatekeeper of knowledge, deciding what humanity could and couldn't know. Charlie stirred, his eyelids fluttering. I tensed, ready for whatever state of mind he might wake with. His eyes opened, confusion giving way to recognition as he looked at me. "Sarah?" His voice was hoarse from screaming, from days of paranoid accusations. "I'm here," I said, keeping my distance. "How do you feel?" He pushed himself up on his elbows, wincing. Like hell. His gaze darted around our camp, settling on the space where the gun had been. "Where is it?" "Somewhere safe," I answered. "You don't need it." Fear flickered across his face. "I shot Jack." "Yes." "He changed. He disappeared." Charlie looked at me, desperate for confirmation or denial. "That happened, right? I'm not crazy?" I hesitated, weighing truth against mercy. Charlie had seen too much to believe a complete lie, but the full truth might break what was left of his mind. "It happened," I said finally, "but not the way you think." Charlie sat up fully, backing away from me until he hit a tree trunk. "Stay back. I can see it in you now. Your eyes." I remained still. "What do you see, Charlie?" "They're different. There's something in them that wasn't there before." His voice shook. "What happened while I was asleep?" I chose my words carefully. "I understand things now, about the island, about what happened to Andrew and Jack. They were taken, changed." His eyes narrowed. "Like you're being changed?" "Not taken," I corrected gently. "They chose to join with something that's been here for a very long time." Charlie's laugh was brittle. "So now you admit it? After telling me I was paranoid? After acting like I was losing my mind?" "I didn't understand then," I said. "I do now." "And what exactly do you understand?" His voice dripped with suspicion. I looked around at the island, the massive ferns, the strange flowers, the volcanic chimney visible through the trees. How could I possibly explain the living entity beneath us, the collective consciousness that had existed here for millions of years? "There's something on this island," I began. "Something ancient and intelligent. It's been watching us, communicating with us in different ways. With Andrew through sound, with Jack through the water, with me through dreams. With me through nothing," Charlie muttered. "It just took my friends and left me with..." He gestured at me. "Whatever you are now." His words stung more than they should have. "I'm still me, Charlie. Still Sarah." The Sarah I knew wouldn't be this calm after watching two men disappear into nothing. He had a point. The old Sarah would be frantically trying to understand, to document, to analyze. She would be grabbing every piece of equipment that still worked, recording observations, planning experiments to test what was happening. Instead, I sat quietly, at peace with knowledge I had no intention of sharing or investigating further. "You're right," I admitted. "I've changed, but not in the way you think." Charlie's stomach growled audibly, interrupting the tension. He looked embarrassed, then wary, as if his body's needs were a betrayal. "When did you last eat?" I asked. He shrugged. Before Jack." I stood slowly, telegraphing my movements. "I'm going to get you some food. Just stay there." Charlie watched me like a cornered animal as I moved to our supplies and gathered some of the blue-fleshed fruit and what remained of our dried fish. I placed them on a piece of sailcloth and slid it toward him. "It's not poisoned," I said, taking a bite of fruit to demonstrate. He hesitated, then hunger won out. He ate ravenously, barely chewing before swallowing. "Slow down," I cautioned. "Your stomach won't be used to it after so long." Charlie ignored me, finishing everything I'd given him. Only when the food was gone did he speak again. "What happens now?" he asked, sounding more like his old self, the leader who had emerged after our shipwreck. "We survive," I said simply. "We wait for rescue." "And if it doesn't come?" I thought of the entity below, its offer of a place waiting for me when my natural life ended. "Then we make the best of what we have here." Charlie studied me, confusion replacing some of the fear in his eyes. "You're different," he repeated. "Before all this, you would have been—" "Excited," I suggested. "Determined to study what was happening, to prove my theories?" "Yes." I looked down at my hands, remembering how they had passed through solid stone in my vision, how I had touched Andrew's transformed essence. "I've seen enough," I said quietly. "What did you see?" Charlie asked, a note of desperate curiosity breaking through his caution. I considered telling him everything: the entity beneath the island, the collective consciousness, Andrew and Jack's transformation, the choice I'd been offered. But I remembered what the entity had shown me. Humanity wasn't ready, and if I was honest with myself, neither was Charlie. "I saw that some knowledge comes with responsibility," I said instead. "That understanding isn't always a good thing." Charlie snorted. "That doesn't sound like you at all." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." We fell silent. In the distance, birds called to each other in the canopy. The stream bubbled over rocks. The island continued its life around us, seemingly normal on the surface while housing something extraordinary beneath. "Do you think they're still alive?" Charlie asked suddenly. "Andrew and Jack?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes," I said truthfully, "but not in the way we think of as living." "What does that mean?" I struggled to find words that wouldn't reveal too much. "They've become part of something else, something bigger than themselves." "That's not an answer." Charlie's voice hardened. "Are they conscious? Do they remember us? Are they suffering?" I remembered Andrew's transformed presence, his thoughts flowing into mine. Maintaining, healing, living. "They're not suffering," I said with certainty. "They're at peace with what happened to them." "How can you know that?" Charlie demanded. "How can you possibly know that?" Instead, I said, "I just know." Charlie stared at me for a long moment. "You're hiding something." "Yes," I admitted. "I am." His expression shifted from suspicion to something more complex. Hurt, betrayal, a hint of the old trust we'd once shared. "Why?" "Because some truths are too dangerous." I held his gaze steadily. "For both of us." Charlie looked away first. "I don't understand what's happening anymore. I don't understand you." "I know," I said softly. "And I'm sorry for that." He struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. "I need to—" He gestured vaguely toward the forest. "There's a spot behind those ferns," I said, pointing. "Do you need help?" "No." His voice was firm. "I can manage that much on my own." I watched him make his way unsteadily into the forest, wondering if he would try to run. Part of me hoped he would. It would be easier than watching his confusion, his sense of betrayal at my transformation. But I knew he wouldn't get far in his weakened state. While he was gone, I examined my own thoughts and feelings. The scientist in me was still there, still curious about the entity beneath the island. But that curiosity had been tempered by something new, a protectiveness, a sense of duty toward the ancient consciousness that had trusted me with its secret. Charlie returned, looking marginally better for having washed his face in the stream. He kept his distance, settling on the opposite side of our cold fire pit. "We need to talk about what we'll tell them," he said abruptly. "Tell who?" "Whoever comes for us. If anyone comes—" He picked up a stick and jabbed at the ashes. "About Andrew and Jack." So we had arrived at the practical problem. I had been so caught up in philosophical questions that I hadn't fully considered what story we would present to the world. "What do you want to tell them?" I asked carefully. Charlie's jaw tightened. "The truth sounds insane. That Andrew walked into solid rock and disappeared. That I shot Jack and he melted into the ground." "Yes," I agreed. "It does sound insane." "So we lie." He looked up at me. "We say Andrew got lost in the jungle. We couldn't find him. And Jack—" He swallowed hard. "We say Jack fell, hit his head on rocks by the stream. We buried him. I considered the story. It was simple enough to be believable, close enough to the truth to be sustainable. That could work. You agree? Charlie seemed surprised at my easy acceptance. I thought you'd want to tell them everything, about your precious anomalies, about whatever's happening here. I shook my head slowly. Not anymore. Why not? Isn't this exactly what you were looking for? Proof that you were right all along? It's more complicated than that now. Charlie jabbed the stick deeper into the ashes, his frustration evident. You know what I think? I think whatever got into Andrew and Jack has gotten into you too. Maybe not the same way, but something about you is different. Wrong. Not wrong, I said gently. Just changed. By what? He demanded. What changed you? I took a deep breath. Knowledge, Charlie. Understanding. Understanding of what? Of what this island really is. Of what lives here. Of what we stumbled into. I gestured around us. This isn't just a place with unusual geological features or strange plants. It's something singular, unique in all the world. And that's reason enough to hide the truth about what happened to our friends? His voice rose in anger. To help whatever killed them stay hidden? They weren't killed, I insisted. And yes, it's reason enough. Charlie shook his head in disgust. I don't know you anymore. The words hurt more than they should have. Once, Charlie had been my closest colleague, the person I trusted most on our expedition. Now we were separated by knowledge I couldn't share and experiences he couldn't understand. I'm sorry, I said, knowing it was inadequate. Charlie turned away, staring into the forest. When we get back, if we get back, I'm not sure I can keep lying. About Jack, about what I did. You were afraid, I said. You thought he was changed, infected. You were protecting yourself. Does that make it better? He asked bitterly. That I killed my friend because I was scared? I had no answer for him. The entity had shown me possible futures where fear drove humans to violence, to destruction. Charlie's actions were just a small-scale version of what could happen if humanity discovered the truth too soon. I don't know if it makes it better, I said finally, but it makes it human. Charlie laughed hollowly. Human, as opposed to whatever Andrew and Jack became, whatever you're becoming. I'm still human, I insisted. Just a human who knows too much. He looked at me then, really looked at me, searching my face for something, reassurance, perhaps, or some sign of the Sarah he had known. Too much about what? He asked quietly. Tell me that much, at least. I hesitated. How much could I safely reveal? How much would help rather than harm? There are intelligences in this world that aren't human, I began slowly. Ancient beings that have existed alongside us without our knowledge. This island is home to one of them. An alien? Charlie's voice was skeptical. No, something that evolved here on Earth just differently than we did. Something that lives beneath rather than above. And it took Andrew and Jack? I chose my words with care. It offered them a chance to join with it, to become part of its consciousness. They accepted. Why would anyone accept that? Charlie demanded. Why would anyone choose to stop being human? I thought of the entity's vast knowledge, its millennia of existence, the way it preserved every consciousness that joined with it. Because what it offered was more than just continued existence. It was transcendence. Charlie stared at me, horror dawning in his eyes. It offered this to you too, didn't it? That's how you know all this. I couldn't lie to him anymore, not about this. Yes, and you. His voice faltered. You didn't take it. No. Why not? The question hung between us. I could have told him about my decision to protect the entity, to keep it secret, but that would only confirm his suspicions that I had changed allegiances, that I was no longer fully human in my loyalties. Instead, I gave him a different truth. Because someone needed to stay. For you. Charlie's expression softened slightly, the first break in his hostility since he'd awakened. You stayed for me? Yes. Even after I threatened you? After what I did to Jack? I nodded. Even after that. He looked away, blinking rapidly. I don't deserve that. It wasn't about deserving, I said. It was about not leaving you alone. We sat in silence for a long time after that. The sun climbed higher, casting dappled shadows through the canopy. Birds called. Insects hummed. The island continued its life around us, oblivious to the human drama playing out in our small clearing. Finally, Charlie spoke again. Do you think anyone's coming for us? I thought of our emergency beacon, deployed by Jack before we abandoned ship. Maybe. The beacon should have activated when the Eleanor went down. How long do we wait? As long as it takes, I said. We have water. We can find food. We can survive here. Charlie looked around at our makeshift camp, at the island that had claimed two of our friends. I don't want to stay here, he said quietly. Not one day longer than we have to. I know. You do want to stay, though, don't you? His gaze was penetrating. You want to learn more about whatever's down there. I considered lying, then decided against it. Part of me does, yes. The scientist in me wants to understand everything about this place, this entity. But the human in me knows that some knowledge comes at too high a price. I met his eyes steadily, and that some secrets need to stay hidden. Charlie nodded slowly, processing this. So we wait for rescue. We tell them Andrew got lost, Jack had an accident. We leave this place and never come back. Yes. And you're okay with that? With never knowing more about what's here? I thought of the entity's final message to me. When it is time, when your life in that form ends naturally, you may return to us if you wish. Your place will wait. I know enough, I said. More than enough. Charlie studied me, confusion still evident in his expression. I don't understand how you can be so calm about all this. So accepting. Because fighting it doesn't help, I said simply. Because what's done is done. Andrew and Jack are gone. The entity beneath this island has existed for millions of years and will continue to exist long after we're gone. All we can do now is survive and return to our world. While keeping it secret, Charlie added, a note of accusation in his voice. Yes, I admitted. While keeping it secret. He shook his head slowly. That goes against everything you believe in as a scientist. Everything you fought for with this expedition. I know. Then why? I sighed, trying to find words that might make him understand. Because I've seen what would happen if the truth got out. If humanity discovered what's here. And what would happen? Fear, panic, eventually violence. I looked down at my hands. We'd try to control it, study it, weaponize it, and it would defend itself. You're protecting it, Charlie said, realization dawning in his voice. This thing that took our friends. I'm protecting both sides, I corrected. The entity from humanity, and humanity from the entity. Neither is ready for the other. Charlie fell silent again, considering this. Finally, he asked, how do you live with it? Knowing what you know now? It was the question I had been asking myself since my return from beneath the island. How would I continue my life as a scientist, knowing the greatest discovery in human history must remain hidden? How would I face my colleagues, my superiors, knowing I would deliberately mislead them about what had happened here? One day at a time, I said finally, carrying the knowledge so others don't have to. Sounds lonely, Charlie observed. Yes, I agreed. It is. The conversation lapsed again. Charlie slowly got to his feet, testing his strength. "I need to walk," he said. "Clear my head." I tensed. "Don't go too far." He gave me a look that was almost like his old self, confident, slightly amused. "I'm not running away. Where would I go?" I watched him walk toward the edge of our clearing, moving slowly but steadily. He stopped at the perimeter, looking back at me. "You..." I woke to Charlie's hand on my shoulder, gently shaking me awake. For a moment, I thought it was just another change of watch, our routine for the past 3 days since our conversation about what happened to Andrew and Jack. "Sarah," he said, his voice tight with something I couldn't immediately identify. "Sarah, wake up." I sat up, rubbing my eyes. "What is it? Is something wrong?" "No." There was an odd quality to his voice, a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Look." He pointed toward the beach. I followed his gesture, squinting through the morning light filtering through the trees. At first, I saw nothing unusual. Then I spotted it. A dark shape on the horizon, too large and too angular to be a natural formation. "Is that..." I began. "A ship," Charlie confirmed. "I spotted it about 20 minutes ago. It's headed straight for the island." My heart leapt and sank simultaneously. Rescue meant safety, return to civilization, an end to our immediate struggle for survival. But it also meant executing our plan, lying about what had happened to Andrew and Jack, concealing the truth about the island and the entity beneath it. "We should signal them," I said, pushing myself to my feet. "Make sure they see us." Charlie nodded. "I've already started gathering wood for a signal fire on the beach." We worked quickly, collecting dry branches and palm fronds. The hum of the entity's presence in my mind seemed to intensify as we prepared for our departure, not intrusively, but as if it too was aware that our time on the island was coming to an end. As we built our fire on the shore, I kept glancing at the approaching ship. It was larger than I had first thought, not a small rescue vessel, but a substantial research ship. The sight of it triggered a flood of emotions, relief, anxiety, and a deep, unexpected sadness. "Foundation vessel," Charlie noted, seeing the distinctive profile. "Looks like the Athena." "They sent a research ship?" I couldn't hide my surprise. The Athena was one of the Foundation's premier vessels, typically reserved for major expeditions. Charlie shrugged. "Maybe it was closest." But we both knew that was unlikely. The Foundation had deliberately sent a research vessel, which meant they suspected something about Island B-212, enough to warrant immediate investigation when our emergency beacon activated. We lit the fire, watching as thick smoke billowed upward. Almost immediately, the ship changed course slightly, heading directly toward our position. They had seen us. "Time to get our story straight," Charlie said quietly. We retreated to the tree line, sitting side by side on a fallen log. For a moment, neither of us spoke, just watching the approaching ship, our rescue, and our reckoning. "So," Charlie finally said, "Andrew got lost exploring. We searched but couldn't find him. Jack fell and hit his head on rocks by the stream. We buried him there." "Yes," I confirmed. "We'll say the shipwreck was caused by an unexpected storm, unusually powerful. The Eleanor went down quickly." "Which is true enough," Charlie acknowledged. "The truth where we can tell it," I agreed. "And the island itself, just an ordinary island with some unusual plant life." Charlie glanced at me. "And the research station? The logbook?" I had thought about this carefully. We discovered an abandoned station, likely from some classified Cold War research project. Nothing significant. The logbook was waterlogged, the writing illegible. "And you?" Charlie asked, his voice softer now. "What will you say about how this place affected you?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'll say the isolation was difficult, that we all struggled with the stress of survival and loss, but that otherwise, it was just an uninhabited island." Charlie looked away, back toward the approaching ship. "And that's it? The greatest discovery in human history just buried? Forgotten?" "Not forgotten," I said quietly. Protected. The entity's presence hummed in agreement at the back of my mind. Not words, but a sense of gratitude, of trust. I should go back, I said suddenly, standing up. To the chimney. One last time. Charlie looked up at me, concern evident in his face. The ship will be here in less than an hour. I know, I'll be quick. I hesitated. I just need to say goodbye. Understanding flickered in his eyes, followed by resignation. I'll finish getting our things together. Don't be long. I nodded and turned toward the forest path, walking quickly through the now familiar route to the volcanic chimney. The massive ferns and strange flowers seemed more vibrant than ever, as if the island itself was putting on a final display for me alone. When I reached the clearing, I approached the stone formation slowly. In the morning light, it looked almost ordinary, just a geological curiosity, not the breathing apparatus of an ancient, living entity. But I knew better. I placed my hand against the warm stone surface, feeling the subtle vibration beneath my fingertips. The connection between us strengthened immediately, the entity's consciousness flowing more clearly into my mind. They've come for us, I said aloud, though I knew words weren't necessary. We're leaving. A wave of acknowledgement washed over me, neither happiness nor sadness, but simple acceptance. This was always how it would end, with me returning to the human world, carrying the entity's secret. I'll keep my promise, I whispered. No one will know what's here, not until humanity is ready. The stone beneath my palm grew warmer. The carved symbols began to glow faintly with that now familiar blue light, visible only to me. Then, without warning, my surroundings dissolved. I was underwater again, but this wasn't like my previous dreams or visions. This was clearer, more immediate, as if the entity was granting me one final, complete glimpse of its true nature. I floated in midnight blue depths, but now I could see farther, understand more. What I had previously perceived as ruins were actually living structures, vast, organic mechanical hybrids that served as homes, laboratories, libraries for the entity's collective consciousness. Thousands of transformed beings moved through these structures, some recognizably descended from humans who had chosen to join the entity over centuries, others completely alien, evolved from marine creatures that had merged with the collective mind. They worked together in perfect harmony, sharing knowledge and purpose. The entity showed me more, its history stretching back millions of years, its gradual evolution from a simple colony organism to the vast intelligence it had become. I saw how it had watched humanity's rise, our struggles and achievements, our beauty and our destructiveness. I understood now why it remained hidden, why it chose to reveal itself to only a few. Humanity's fear of the unknown, our instinct to control what we didn't understand. These made coexistence impossible, at least for now. Then I saw Andrew and Jack, their consciousness preserved within the greater whole, their memories and knowledge integrated but not erased. They existed now in a state beyond my comprehension, neither alive nor dead as humans understood those terms, but continuing, evolving, learning. They were at peace, happy in their way. The vision shifted again, showing me possible futures, centuries ahead, when humanity might finally be ready for contact, when the barriers between our worlds might safely dissolve. I saw how the entity would wait, patient and eternal, for that moment. And I saw myself, growing older, living my life in the human world, always carrying this secret, always connected in some small way to the consciousness beneath Island B212. The vision showed me returning here one day, at the end of my natural life, to join with the entity as Andrew and Jack had done, if I still wished it. Your place will wait, came the thought, not in words, but in pure understanding. Then, gently, the vision faded. I found myself kneeling before the volcanic chimney, tears streaming down my face. The stone was cool now, the symbols dark and dormant. The entity had shown me everything it could, had granted me this final gift of understanding. "Thank you," I whispered, pressing my forehead against the ancient stone. "Until we meet again." I felt a final brush of acknowledgement across my mind, and then the connection receded. Not gone completely, but quieter now, a faint hum at the very edge of my awareness. The entity was giving me space to return to my human life, to fulfill my role as its guardian. I walked back to our camp slowly, committing every detail of the island to memory. The strange plants, the quality of light filtering through the oversized ferns, the soft pulse of life that permeated everything here. I would never see this place again, not in this lifetime. Charlie was waiting at our camp, our meager possessions packed and ready. He looked up as I approached, studying my face with concern. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I replied, and was surprised to find it was true. I felt a peace I hadn't expected, the weight of responsibility balanced by the honor of being chosen, of being trusted with something so profound. "The ship's almost here," Charlie said, gesturing toward the beach. "They've lowered a boat." I nodded, picking up my pack, containing the waterlogged tablet, some tools, and a few personal items we'd salvaged. I'd left the logbook behind at the chimney, returned to its source. Some knowledge wasn't meant to leave the island. We walked to the shore together, where our signal fire still burned. A small boat was approaching, carrying 4 people in Foundation uniforms. I recognized the team leader immediately, Dr. Elena Vargas, head of the Pacific Research Division. As the boat reached the shallows, Elena jumped out, wading through knee-deep water toward us. Her face showed a mixture of relief and professional assessment. "Dr. Chen, Mr. Dawson," she called. "Thank God you're alive." We walked down to meet her, Charlie moving with the stiffness of someone bracing for an ordeal. I touched his arm briefly, a reminder of our agreement, our shared story. "Your emergency beacon activated 12 days ago," Elena explained, reaching us. "We got here as fast as we could." Her eyes darted past us, searching. "Where are the others? Dr. Liu? Morrison?" The moment had come sooner than I expected. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "They didn't make it." Elena's face fell. "Both of them? What happened?" I told her our prepared story. Andrew getting lost in the dense jungle after the shipwreck, our futile search efforts. Jack's tragic fall at the stream, the makeshift burial we'd performed. I described the sudden storm that had sunk the Eleanor, our struggle to survive with minimal supplies. As I spoke, I watched Elena's face carefully. There was genuine sorrow there, but also something else. A hint of calculation, of prior knowledge. She knew something about this island, something the Foundation hadn't shared with our expedition. "And the island itself?" she asked when I finished. "Did you observe anything unusual during your time here?" Charlie tensed beside me. This was the crucial moment, the question that revealed the Foundation's true interest. "Unusual?" I kept my voice neutral. "The plant life is certainly distinctive, larger specimens than typically found in this region, some unusual coloration. There's a volcanic formation inland that suggests past geothermal activity. We found an abandoned research station, probably from the Cold War era. Nothing of significance remained." Elena nodded, her expression giving nothing away. "We'll need to document everything, of course. Protocol for lost personnel." "Of course," I agreed, though there's not much to see. We've been focused on survival, not research." "Understandable," Elena said. She gestured to the boat. "Let's get you both aboard the Athena. You can give full statements there, and our medical team should check you over." As we waded out to the boat, I glanced back at the island one last time. From here, it looked almost ordinary, just a small, unassuming patch of land in the vast Pacific. Its true nature hidden beneath layers of ocean and stone beyond human perception, exactly as it should be. The trip to the Athena passed in a blur. Elena asked a few more questions, but nothing probing or suspicious. The other team members, a medical officer and 2 research assistants, were focused on checking our vital signs and basic health. "Remarkable condition, considering," the medical officer commented, examining the calluses on my hands. No major injuries, adequate hydration. You two managed well. We were lucky, Charlie said, his first words since we'd left the shore. The island had fresh water and edible fruit. Once aboard the Athena, we were separated for individual debriefings. I was taken to Elena's office, a small but well-appointed room near the bridge. She offered me coffee, which I accepted gratefully, savoring the familiar taste after weeks of stream water. Now, she said, activating a recording device on her desk. I need your official statement about what happened to the Eleanor and your time on Island B212. I repeated our story, adding enough specific details to make it convincing without elaborating unnecessarily. I described the storm that sank our ship, our salvage efforts, the discovery of fresh water, Andrew's disappearance while exploring, Jack's fatal fall. Elena listened without interruption, making occasional notes. When I finished, she sat back in her chair, studying me. "And that's everything?" she asked. "Nothing else unusual or notable about your experience?" I met her gaze steadily. We were shipwrecked on an uninhabited island for nearly 2 weeks. We lost 2 colleagues and friends. Every day was about survival, not scientific observation. Elena nodded slowly. The Foundation will want a full report on Island B212. Your observations, limited as they were, could still be valuable. I'll provide what I can, I said, though as I mentioned, our focus was elsewhere. Of course. Elena deactivated the recording device. Off the record now, Sarah. Are you all right? This must have been traumatic. The concern in her voice seemed genuine. For a moment, I considered telling her everything, about the entity beneath the island, about Andrew and Jack's transformation, about my own communion with an ancient consciousness. But the memory of my vision held me back, the possible futures where fear led to destruction, where humanity's need to control resulted in conflict. The world wasn't ready. I'm processing it, I said instead. Losing Andrew and Jack, it's been difficult. But Charlie and I did what we had to do to survive. And Charlie? Elena asked. How is he handling things? As well as can be expected, I replied carefully. The isolation, the losses, they affected us both. Elena nodded, apparently satisfied. We'll have a counselor available when we reach San Diego, for both of you. Thank you. You should rest now, she said, standing. We've prepared quarters for you. We'll be heading back immediately, should reach the mainland in about 5 days. I stood as well, suddenly aware of how exhausted I felt. Not physically, our life on the island had been demanding, but not debilitating, but emotionally, mentally. The weight of everything I'd experienced, everything I now knew and could never share, pressed down on me. One more thing, Elena said as I reached the door. Island B212 has been on the Foundation's watch list for some time. Your expedition was not entirely sanctioned at the highest levels. I turned back to face her. What are you saying? Only that there may be questions about why you chose that specific location, about what you might have known beforehand. Her expression was carefully neutral. It would be best if you emphasized the academic interest, the geological anomalies, the unique ecosystem, nothing more. She knew something. The Foundation knew something about the island, had perhaps always known. I understand, I said. Good. Elena smiled thinly. Get some rest, Sarah. You're safe now. I found my assigned quarters, a small but comfortable cabin with a real bed, a shower, clean clothes. The luxury of it after weeks in our makeshift camp was almost overwhelming. I showered first, watching as the island's dirt swirled down the drain, leaving only the memories behind. Afterward, I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the subtle vibration of the ship's engines as we moved away from Island B212. I reached out with my mind, searching for that familiar hum of the entity's presence. It was still there, fainter now with distance, but persistent, a connection that would never fully break. I closed my eyes, focusing on it, drawing comfort from the knowledge that I wasn't entirely alone in carrying this secret. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Charlie, his hair still damp from his own shower, dressed in clean foundation-issued clothes like mine. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. I stepped aside, letting him enter. He sat in the small chair by the desk while I returned to the edge of the bed. For a moment, we just looked at each other, two survivors bound by a shared experience no one else could understand. "How did your debriefing go?" I asked finally. "Fine." Charlie ran a hand through his hair. I stuck to our story. Andrew got lost. Jack fell. Nothing unusual about the island. Elena suggested the Foundation had prior interest in B-212, I said, that our expedition wasn't fully sanctioned. Charlie nodded. She mentioned something similar to me. Wanted to know specifically why we chose that island. What did you tell her? That it was your project, that I trusted your research. He gave me a tired smile, which was true. I looked down at my hands, remembering how they had passed through solid stone in my vision, how they had touched the transformed essence of Andrew beneath the island. "I'm sorry I led us there. Don't." Charlie's voice was firm. "You couldn't have known what would happen. None of us could have." Still, I met his gaze. "Two men are gone because of my curiosity, my need to prove I was right." "They're not gone," Charlie said softly. "Not according to you. Just changed." I nodded, surprised by his acceptance. "Does that make it any easier for you?" "I don't know." He looked away. "Maybe someday. Right now, I just want to get home, to try to put this behind me." "You believe me then? About what happened to them? What's beneath the island?" Charlie was silent for a long moment. "I believe something happened that I can't explain. Something that changed you. Whether it's what you described, some ancient intelligence, some collective consciousness, I don't know. But I believe you believe it. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was more than I had expected. Thank you." "What happens when we get back?" Charlie asked. "To our lives, our work." I had.